Shan, you're not audible.
No, I haven't spoken yet.
Okay.
I'm just trying to toggle between the chat and try to see if everyone can see the PPT. Okay.
Yeah, we can. Uh, Guys, please unmute yourself and speak up and maybe react because it's hard to navigate between chat and the PPT. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, reactions are cool because I can see that on my screen. Fair enough. All right. So I've started the recording with this session, and to briefly talk about what is this China plus one strategy. Before that, we need to understand what is this China plus one strategy, why plus one, why not minus one, what actually led to this uh, coining this term of China plus one strategy, right? Once we go through these things, we'll try to understand what are the benefits when it comes to Indian context. Who really benefits in the Indian sector? So all those set of things we'll talk about over here. And we'll also talk about what are the challenges in Indian sector. Just because you talk about China plus one strategy and you look at Asian markets doesn't mean that all is hunky-dory in India. So what are the challenges in the sector, Indian sectorial scenario? All these things will cover over here. So this session may not be a complete session in totality. There would be another part to this. I'll try to cover the best I can over in this session, given the fact that we are already down 16 minutes and we have time till 8. So we'll try to cover whatever we have on our plate right now. If there is any spillover, I feel that there is another session required, we'll definitely go to the next session without any delay. So I don't want to burden you with a lot of information in this live session. Now, before going and delving deeper into this topic, the another thing which is important for us to understand, what is the purpose of this session? The purpose of this session is to understand China plus one strategy from a context of B school interview. We are not here to write IS examination, neither we are writing this PSC, state PSC examinations. We'll understand the context specifically from a B school interview perspective. What are the different questions that can be asked from a B school interview? What are the topics or what the opinions that they might look for in a candidate? So those set of things we are going to cover in this session. Don't expect something which is very detailed, which is typically asked in a state PSC or UPSC examinations. That's not what we are going to cover. So setting the expectations very clear in this session. In case you want to delve deep into the topic and you have some bandwidth or time to research about the topics, you feel free to do so. And you can also share your experiences or the research learnings that you have received in the Discord channel. But over here, we are strictly focusing ourselves to B school interview topics and the concepts. Correct? I hope with this expectation setting, everyone is okay with me. On sync?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So I'll switch my screen to that. At the moment, I'm not looking at the chat box. In case you have any questions, please park it in the chat box. Whenever I give a gap of 1 or 2 minutes, I'll pick it up from the chat box, right? Okay, so what is this China plus one strategy or C plus one strategy? So this is a term which is described to businesses avoiding investing solely in China and diversifying their business into other countries. Now, who are the other countries which are shortlisted? You might have heard of Vietnam, Philippines, India, and also to some extent Bangladesh as well, and Sri Lanka. And definitely there is one another important country, which is Japan. So these are the set of countries that have been shortlisted to be the China plus one. And why China plus one? Because, and why this set of countries in the Asian sector? Because they are pretty close to China. So moving out the logistics and supply chain from one country to a country nearby or in the neighborhood would be far more easier and less hassle. So you cannot make a China plus one strategy in Europe or for that matter in Ireland. Right? So they're looking for markets in Asia. So C plus one strategy refers to a business started by companies, especially the MNCs, to diversify their production and supply chain activities by adding an alternative location to China. Okay. Now, when we were young, right, our elders often told us the story of a man who used to put all his eggs in one basket. If you are unfamiliar with the story, this is how something it goes. So a farmer has a coop with plenty of hens who lay egg each day. So while collecting the eggs, the farmer gathers them and puts them in one basket. But walking back home, the farmer trips and all his precious eggs are lost. Why precious egg? Because that's the only breadwinner for the family. Now, the moral of the story is it's wiser to have several paths to success instead of relying on a singular path or a unidirectional plan of action. So, China plus one strategy simply applies that learning to international trade or international relations, and for that matter, economics as well of the country. Correct? So, over the past decades, China has been the number one investment destination for companies worldwide, be it US, be it any Western worlds, be it the European Union, for that matter, Japan as well. So all the investors used to spend in the Chinese market. Now, what are the reasons? The reasons for this are low wages in China, typically in the last 30, 40 years, 3 to 4 decades. A huge labor force was present in China. That is evident from the fact that they have a great population and also a working population. A substantial chunk was working population. And also the ease of doing business in China was pretty conducive for international companies. Now, these factors led to many industries setting up manufacturing plants in China and outsource the production to Chinese players. Apple used to manufacture phones in China, assemble in China, manufacture in China. Recently, they have shifted the base to India. But till, let's say, 2020, till the COVID has hit us, a major portion of manufacturing used to happen in China for iPhone. Recently, there has been a growing movement to diversify investment to other investment destinations in Asia. And this is where the number of countries that have been shortlisted, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Vietnam to a very large extent. And also we are looking at Indian context as well, because Chinese market and Indian market are pretty much the same in terms of the population that we have, right? So is everyone clear on this part? Is everyone with me? Reactions?
Yes, Shan.
At this point of time. Okay, well, we'll move ahead. Second part of it. Now let's try to understand why, the part of why China plus one strategy came into being. Now it's also important to note that this China plus one strategy was coined somewhere back in 2013, but there was no conclusive evidence of who coined actually the term. So if you're being asked that who coined the term of China strategy or C plus one strategy, you can say that it's still under debate and under controversy. No one has really been the pioneer of this term, right? So you can say this if there is a question at all asked over here. So let's try to understand what is the why part of China plus one strategy. Very interestingly, as I mentioned, given the immense attractions that China offers to international investors, it might seem surprising to you and as well to me as well that firms would seek to spread their investments beyond the country. Why would someone do that actually? Nevertheless, we can identify a number of motives for China plus one strategy. If you go deeper into the concept and why this C plus one came into being, you'll find a number of concepts, number of theories, number of school of thoughts coming into this. The importance of China, both as a manufacturing base and as a market for finished goods, means that C plus one strategy can be analyzed both from a sourcing strategy, also from a sales strategy, or maybe a combination of both. So what I'm trying to say is sourcing strategy, and I don't know if I can write this over here. Just a second. Okay, so I'm not able to write it anyway. So, but I'll tell you. So, both from a sourcing strategy as well as from a sales strategy. So, sourcing strategy means what? Means the concern with rising cost is the principal motivation. And in the later case, which is the sales strategy, over dependence on a single market can be harmful. And also, the growing difficulties of doing business is the prime reason for the adoption of C+1 strategy. And primarily, there are a lot of reasons. You can talk about the four principal motives. One is the labor cost and the rising wages. Owing to China's rising stature in the developed economy, wages in the country have also seen a steep increase over the 2010, 2015, 2020s. And minimum wages in China have increased over 30% from 2010 to 2016. And this has increased in different regions of China. It's not that just one particular region in China. It's an increasing trend across China. In regions like Jianghe is one of the region in China, the nominal wage almost doubled. There are some places where the nominal wage almost tripled. While in Beijing, Beijing, it increased by 63%, the nominal wage. And the markets with lower minimum wages like Vietnam, Indonesia, India present a rosy opportunity for the companies to manage their expenditures during the global recession. Now, you all know that 2008, 2009, this time, the global financial crisis had hit us. After that, strategies to diversify was implemented. And one of the strategies to diversify was to cost reduction. And the cost reduction means outsourcing a lot of work to India or to countries with a cheap labor. I won't say India is a cheap labor, but they paint a very rosy opportunity for companies who are trying to put pressures on the sales, put pressure on the administration cost, which is the salaries part, right? They want to decrease the salary overhead. So why this China plus one strategy? It's a labor cost. That is one. The second is the structural reforms. This is very, very important. Starting 2009, just after the global financial crisis, several tax privileges for the foreign invested enterprises began to expire. And China has already unified its corporate tax system. So this has led to the rise in tax rates for companies operating in the country. And there is also something called dual circulation strategy, which I'll briefly explain, and you can also research it. Very interestingly, this dual circulation strategy is a theory posted by the Chinese government, primarily Xi Jinping. Yeah. So this is very interesting topic. You can read about it in Zeconomics, which is Xi Jinping plus economics, right? So they have beautifully mentioned what is this dual circulation strategy in China. All right. Now, the two prongs of this dual circulation strategy is one, it seeks rely more on Chinese domestic consumers. It's more like Atmanirbhar Bharat for China. So Atmanirbhar China, basically. So it seeks to rely more on Indian domestic, the Chinese domestic consumers. And second, the other prong, the other pillar of dual strategy is it seeks to innovate more domestically developed technology and thereby reduce China's resilience on the Western technology. So these are the two main pillars of Atmanirbhar China, if I have to call it in that way. All right. Are you with me on this? Okay, someone has raised their hand. Please unmute yourself. if you have any questions.
Hi, Shyam sir.
Yep.
I want to ask this line that China has already unified its corporate tax system. So how does this makes the business difficult?
So this is primarily related to the ease of doing business. Now I'll come to this a little bit from now as to what are the tax problems that was there in China. But if you have to understand from a unified tax system, it's more like applying GST. So what happened during the application of GST? There were a lot of resistance into GST. Why? Because people thought that the businesses, rather than people, the businesses thought that there's a loss for the businesses. They need to pay tax, a heavy tax, and pay to the government.
Yes.
So there was a lot of resistance from the businesses, let alone the retail side. There was a lot of resistance from big multinational corporations that GST should not be there in India. If you want to read the facts, please go ahead on Google, read whatever the resistance provided by different companies, big companies for that matter. Similarly, the unique tax system in China caused perceptions of difficulty in doing business for the multinational corporations. For example, let's say Accenture, or let's say HSBC, or for example, so there are different companies who were seeing that the unified tax system would harm their balance sheet. In what sense? That would increase the tax pressures on their balance sheet.
Means that they would need to pay more tax.
They would have to pay more tax.
Okay.
Yeah. There was someone else who has also raised their hand. Please ask. Yes, please go ahead and ask. Someone else was there.
Am I audible?
Yes.
I shall have it to the side. Sorry, I'm on the move, but I think I posted a question in the chat. If you can please address that, that would be great.
Sorry, can you come again?
Uh, I posted a question on the chat regarding the humanitarian aspect of C++. Is it possible for you to address that?
I'll get to this. But till this point of time, is it clear what I'm saying right now in terms of strategy? Why this C++ strategy?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I'll briefly deep down a little bit on this dual circulation. Let me come back to the slide once again. So this dual circulation strategy actually enshrines China's long-standing ambition to become self-sufficient. As I mentioned, this is more like a Atmanirbhar China concept. So such an ambition was made known to the world in 2015 after the launch of China's Industrial Policy Master Plan. Right? This is where the unified tax regime comes in. Someone was asking about this. So this China's Industrial Policy Master Plan, when it came to being, this concept of dual circulation strategy came. Now, this is called Made in China 2025. If you search on Google, you will find Made in China 2025. And even though this came at a point when the world was heavily investing in China and was in full engagement with China, with different IT services, with different manufacturing, logistics, supply chain services. Since Trump's push for a trade and technology war, Donald Trump's push for a trade and technology war against China, these Chinese leadership has been relying on a dual circulation strategy. Chinese leadership as in the government of China, to support the China's growth and have less reliance on the Western technology or Western dependence. So this basically means insulating the domestic market from the rest of the world by eliminating any bottlenecks or any hurdles, whether in terms of natural resources or technology or manufacturing, so as to vertically integrate its production and achieve self-reliance served by the Chinese retail market or the Chinese business market, which is a great and a huge market in essence. So a relevant consequence for the world is that China will no longer need to import high-end inputs from the Western countries, with obvious negative consequences on major exports of technology, such as, let's say, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and definitely the US. Right? So the dual circulation strategy is two pillars. One is making China self-reliant and have less reliance on the Western developed technology. And second part of it is more and more Chinese domestic consumers ka involvement. These are the two things. Now we'll come to the political angles. Now, I don't know how many of you actually follow the Chinese politics, but if you have a very decent understanding, you know that that's a very closed economy. They don't want things to go outside the borders of the country. So China has been seeing rising tensions in the global socio-political sphere over many issues are there. Some of them are Hong Kong's independence movement. There are some anti-Japanese protest is also there. A definite problem with the Taiwan capturing of China. There is also problem in the South China Sea. So different international and geopolitical problems and pressures are there with China. And during his term as the US president, Donald Trump took many anti-China initiatives to reduce the trade power of Chinese giants like Huawei. So they banned the Huawei mobile phones at some point. And also during COVID, Donald Trump has termed the coronavirus as Chinese virus or Wuhan virus. I'm sure everyone recalls this thing. So this has fueled the companies willing to disinvest themselves from the country and diversify into growing markets. And when I say disinvesting means that reducing the share of investment in Chinese market. It's not that they're completely taking away their investments from China. Obviously, they cannot. That's a huge risk. But they're trying to disinvest. Agar pehle 80% tha investment, now they're making it maybe 72% or 65%. But gradually it is in a decreasing trend. Okay. The next part of it is the China's zero COVID policy. As we all know, during the COVID, there was a complete lockdown in China. All the manufacturing outlets were closed. The supply chain was heavily and negatively halted. So which means that all the major manufacturing companies who, let's say, assemble in India or other parts of the world faced a huge crunch in terms of exporting raw materials. Getting materials in and out of China was a difficult problem. There was always a shortage of containers in the supply chain, which caused limited supply of products in and out of China. And as a result, United States and Europe, in their supplier dependence on China, had to look elsewhere for a reliable and a solution for the supply of components and the raw materials, which would also give them a cost advantage. And this is where markets like Vietnam, markets like India could help to these to these European and Western companies. Next, we'll try to understand what are the benefits of this China plus one strategy. We are talking about China plus one, but आखिर में है क्या ये China plus one and इसमें benefit क्या होगा मेरा मतलब इंडिया का and also the world. The first important benefit is risk diversification. ये तो अपन को समझ में आ गया अभी तक कि ये typically is a concept of not putting all eggs in the one basket. I'll try to have different baskets to keep my eggs. And I'll try to distribute it either evenly or maybe in some proportion which reduces my risk. So risk diversification is a likely reason you're considering China plus one strategy in the first place. Supply chain disruptions caused by a number of factors, from natural disasters to political tensions to global pandemic. And till date, we are giving blame to China for the coronavirus. Correct? So if you are supplying predominantly from a single country, all it takes is one of these factors to halt your production process. अगर कल मान के चलो आई एम स्टेइंग, लेट्स से आई हैव अ बिजनेस इन कलकत्ता, एंड कल मान के चलो ममता दीदी ने पूरा कलकत्ता का बंद कर दिया, then my entire manufacturing process comes to a halt, my business comes to a halt, my revenue comes to a halt, my company can go bankrupt. I have to file insolvency if this continues in a country or in a state like this. And that is primarily the reason why we have ease of doing business, and this government is focusing on easier processes to do business. So China plus one encourages manufacturers to establish supplies in multiple countries, reducing risk and resulting in a highly adaptable supply chain that can withstand the unexpected. अगर कल जाके कोरोना के जगह कोई मोरोना आया या फिर जोरोना आया, जो भी आया, at least I should have another standby in my kitty, which is, or rather, which would be able to withstand the entire shock. So this is risk diversification. The second is opportunities to lower cost. As we discussed earlier, China is no longer considered a low-cost labor market for several products and services. The shortage of skilled workforce coupled with wage issues is making China lose its cost advantage. As we mentioned, the wages, the nominal wage, to almost double, triple in different parts of China, and across China, the overall nominal wage has been increasing. So this has made China lose its USP in terms of cheap labor. And in response to these, companies are setting up manufacturing in countries with lower labor cost. For example, Heinz is a brand, HINES. So this brand is a leading undergarments manufacturer, which has set up automated plant in Vietnam, though in a very limited area. It's a very small unit that they have set up, but still they're looking to go beyond China and to Asian markets. So they've created one plant in Thailand owing to lower labor cost, right? So they're trying to diversify their manufacturing setups so that अगर कल चाइना का जीरो कोविड पॉलिसी के वजह से मेरा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्लांट बंद हो गया, at least I'll have 2 other plants or other 3 other plants running at the same time to sustain my demand. So lower cost benefit can also be realized by moving manufacturing in a closer proximity to the final markets, or rather to the finished markets. What is finished markets or what is final markets? This is where you're selling your product. कहाँ पर बना? कानपुर का कोई जानकार प्लांट है, उसमें बना है, और HUL साबुन बेच रहे कहाँ पर? जैसा चेन्नई के, तो तमिलनाडु के चेन्नई में साबुन बेच रहे, सिर्फ वही जगह बेच रहे. So the production is happening at Kanpur. The final market or the finished market is in Chennai. I hope the difference is understood. I'll quickly take a pause and in sync. Are you with me on this? Right. Now, most people have a little bit of dilemma in the mind, or there could be some questions. यार पढ़ तो रहे हैं China plus, but questions कैसा? Questions may not be direct to you in a B school interview. The questions would be combined with facts as well as your opinion to topics, your opinion to the geopolitical issues in India, outside India. So whenever a B school interview happens, you could be asked, hey, Ayush, let's say we're taking the name of Ayush. So, hey, Ayush, can you tell me what's your opinion on the China plus one strategy? Now, whenever they are asking you your opinion, you will not only share the facts, you will share your thought process behind this geopolitical issue. What actually you think on this matter, which will be backed by facts, by figures, by numbers. So when I'm talking about opportunities to lower cost, you should be mentioning कि बॉस बीजिंग में अपना नॉमिनल वेज डबल हो गया, जियांगजिंग में अपना नॉमिनल वेज ट्रिपल हो गया. So on the basis of this, Chinese market is losing that cost advantage. So whenever you're talking about the benefit opportunities to low cost, you are stating the facts about wages. You are stating the fact how the entire nominal GDP has increased, due to which the salaries of people have increased, due to which the cost advantage Chinese people used to enjoy a decade back is not there anymore. Right? So I hope you understand how you should frame your opinionated question. Now, there are two sets of questions, I'll tell you. There are questions which are very specific, and there are questions which are general, and the questions which are opinionated. Just give me 1 second. All right. So the next part of it is the knowledge transfer. The diversification strategy offers scope for learning from new markets for organizations and using their core competencies for growth. So something that is working in China may not work in a market like India. So you need to understand how the market of India is built. You need to understand the laws governing it. You need to understand the tax implications. You need to understand the climate conditions if you have to set up a plant. You need to understand the climate conditions. You need to understand how the roads and railway tracks are connected to the manufacturing unit, to the production where you're happening. You will not definitely open a manufacturing plant in Arunachal Pradesh, in the hills of Arunachal Pradesh, and you're probably selling in Pune or Maharashtra or somewhere down south. Right? You will have final production or final markets as close as possible and as strategically located as possible to your production, so that the transport cost and the time is minimized and optimized. I won't say I would rather use the term optimized. You have to optimize the time of transporting and the cost of transportation. So understanding the markets is important. So companies can use their experience in transferring knowledge to the partnering economies where they can grow beyond merely a production location. They might use India as a final market, as a market of finished goods. Okay. The next one is access to new markets. As I mentioned, choosing your +1 destination allows your company to tap into different markets, which can strategically use to your company's advantage. Let's say tomorrow in Japan, there's an earthquake and your entire manufacturing plant is destroyed. It's pathetic to know as a company. Vis-a-vis, you have another manufacturing unit in India, somewhere in, let's say, Kerala, and you can run the BCP, which is the business continuity plan, from Kerala. So you're having one extra place or one extra operating unit to run up the business. The business should not face any halt. The business should run. And this is possible only when you have access to a new market. Interestingly, if you also want to serve a new market, you need to understand the consumer behavior of that market, understand the trends of that market, understand the different demands in different parts of the country. So someone looking for there would be huge demand of sweaters and sweatshirts and jackets, maybe in Uttarakhand, maybe in Kashmir, Srinagar, whereas the demand for these products may not be that significant in the southern states, like let's say Tamil Nadu, or somewhere a place in Chennai, or it could be a place in Coimbatore. And if you don't understand the demand in different parts of the nation, you'll not be able to tap into the market. So access to market is important so that you can diversify not only your manufacturing and supply chain operations, but also your target audience, where you're trying to sell the finished product. Okay. The next is technology and expertise. Now, nothing to explain new over here. There are expertise available in different industries, different technologies. AI expertise is there in US. AI expertise is gradually coming up to the surface in India, though is at a very, very niche level. But the technology and the expertise that we have over here in India could be utilized in a better way. So technology and expertise is probably the best in India at the moment. If you go by the nearby locations and the neighborhood China plus one countries. So by expanding your manufacturing base to these countries like India, your company can gain access to new technologies that is indigenous to that location and may not be readily available elsewhere, so that you get that competitive advantage. Additionally, you get into the specialized labor market. So अगर इंडिया में एक ऐसा प्रोडक्ट बन रहा है जिसमें इंडिया फेमस है, let's say UPI, which is developed by NPCI. तो UPI अगर कोई दूसरा कंट्री को करना है, बनाना है, इतना अच्छा पेमेंट इंटरफेस बनाना है, so they would look at Indian banking system. They would come to NPCI. They would read the knowledge sharing articles and the thought leadership articles shared by India, or rather the Indian banking system. So these are specialized labor markets for this. So for UPI, and to build a complex payment infrastructure and a fast payment infrastructure, you would look at NPCI. So with technology and expertise, you also get the benefit of China plus one strategy. All right. Any questions till this point in time? Yes, Ishika.
So can you please explain knowledge transfer once more?
Yeah, sure. So knowledge transfer is, let's say, the diversification strategy from learning from new markets. So strategy for Indian consumer will be different from strategy from, let's say, a Malaysian customer. Strategies for Malaysian customer could be different from strategies in a Chinese ecosystem. However, there are some things which is common to these consumers. So whatever you have learned in the China market, maybe 20% of them could be transferred to Indian market. Not all, but maybe 20% could be transferred. So you have a knowledge that can be transferred to the partnering economies. So let's say 7-Eleven is a very well-known retail brand in US. So they want to explore the Indian market, or they want to get into the Indian market. So they have partnered with what? They have partnered with Mr. Ambani. कि बॉस आप रिलायंस के पार्टनर बनाओ, और पार्टनर बना के आप, Reliance has the expertise to understand the nerve of Indian consumer, understand the nerve of Indian retail consumer, and also the business customers. So I'll use the knowledge of Ambani, or rather Reliance, and enter the market, which will give me some cost advantage. And इसमें अंबानी का क्या बेनिफिट हुआ? वो अपना कमीशन या फिर वो अपना जो कंसल्टिंग कॉस्ट है वो अपना रख लेगा. And there could be other different benefits as well, but this is what it means. So Ambani ties up with 7-Eleven and says that, hey, okay, I'm going to help you to crack the Indian market because we have the expertise to do it for a decade long. So this is how the knowledge transfer happens from one economy to another economy. And this typically helps if you have a partnering economy, which means that the economies are pretty nearby to each other.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we are going to talk about how to choose your +1 location. On the right hand side, cost. Balancing cost effectiveness and operating efficiency ensures sustainable supply chain diversification while maintaining competitiveness, which is why cost should be the first thing you evaluate before choosing your new location. We have talked about cost a lot in the last 30-35 minutes. Why do you need to do that? Because it is one of the important aspects that will affect your balance sheet. So additionally, you will also want to understand how the local regulations, business laws, someone was talking about unified tax system. This is where it comes to. अगर मैं 10 रुपए लगाऊंगा इधर, क्या टैक्स मेरा 40% कटेगा इधर से, ना 20% कटेगा, या फिर 0% टैक्स होगा, ये मेरे को देखना है, because that will affect my balance sheet. So we'll also try to understand the local regulations, business laws, the government policies. Is it actually benefiting the company to make business or do business, or is it actually being a hurdle? Is it a capitalist country or a socialist country? So be sure to identify any incentives or any benefits offered to foreign businesses, such as tax breaks or tax agreements, or maybe there could be tax exemptions for the first couple of years, right? So cost is one important thing. There are different PLI schemes which are coming in. I'm sure everyone is aware of PLI schemes. If not, just quickly Google up and you can read a lot of PLI schemes for different manufacturing sectors, supply chain sectors. So these PLI schemes are, one, to benefit the Indian startup ecosystem in production. Second, the PLI schemes are also helping some of the foreign institutions come in, because they also need the FDI from the foreign markets. So India needs FDI and FII in different sectors to boost the sectors. The next part of it is the geopolitical and economic risk. You don't want to operate in a country which is very closed. The information is not shared out of the country. Typically, a country called China, where a lot of information is isolated. They don't want to leak the information to the Western world, or for that matter, any outer world. It is crucial to thoroughly assess the geopolitical and economic stability of the supplier country or the potential supplier country. This entails examining the political conditions, who's at power, government stability, what is the ideological thought process of that government, some of the economic indicators as well, like GDP growth, inflation rates, wage rates, sectorial growth, balance of payment, fiscal deficit. So these are the important economic indicators that should be noted. Equally, only the potential impact on your import and export cost. You also need to look at the potential impact on import and export cost between the new country and the target country and the target market. So where you want to produce and where you want to sell, the cost, the time should be minimal, should be optimal. So are there any trade struggles between, let's say, like China and US is having? Are there any trade, differences between India and Maldives, maybe, for that matter? We all know what's happening between India and Maldives right now. So are there any trade bottlenecks over there? So if, let's say, as a company, my target market is Maldives, right now, if I have to think, I'll not have anything in India, maybe, because of the trade battle going on. Just quoting for an example. The next part of it is the infrastructure and logistics. One of the reasons China appeal to many businesses is a strong infrastructure and supply chain. ये तो मानना पड़ेगा. According to China briefing, China is the only country that possesses all the industrial categories in the United Nations industrial classification, which allows the firms to produce goods easily and source goods easily. They also have a largest network of high-speed rails, expressways. Matlab, the connectivity is strong so that the products can be transported efficiently from one place to another place. While this is, or rather this will be hard to beat, it is still important for companies to examine the availability and quality of a plus one country's infrastructure, including transportation networks, ports, roads, utilities, I mean the electricity generation, power generation. Additionally, look at the country's proximity to key markets and connectivity to major trade routes, both of which can impact the overall supply chain efficiency and cost. The other part or the other points you can mention is the supplier reputation. अगर जिस कंट्री में हम लोग पहुंच रहे हैं प्रोडक्शन करने लगे उधर का सप्लायर का रेपुटेशन कैसा है, what is the financial health of the supplier. When it comes to working with new suppliers, you understand their financial health, the industry, the reputation, the history of reliability and performance is important. Ensuring the supply chain resilience involves assessing their ability to navigate disruptions. If there is any disruptions to the market or any calamity, how do they maintain the operations during such crisis? You should also consider if there is a potential for long-term relationship with your new supplier, or is it just a temporary transaction that you're making. You'll also look at their ability to collaborate, their technological investments, their growth. So all such things needs to be checked. And definitely the workforce. As I mentioned, employees are the backbone of every business, which means that one country needs skilled workforce and the right workforce. So first, evaluate your company's employment needs, including your ideal skill set to produce a product or give that services, and then evaluate each potential country's labor market by asking yourself the question like, is the country's workforce skilled in specific technologies, or is the country's workforce large enough to meet my business needs? Actually, whether there is a ample supply to meet the needs of my product, or to meet the needs of the production of the products, or to meet the needs of servicing my clients. So you need to consider all such factors like what is the education system of the country, are the training programs efficient, what is employment stability in the country. All such things will add to the size and availability of labor market in the plus one country. Right? Ultimately, with all the factors coming into being, I'll quickly repeat what are the factors. I've spoken quite a few out of this slide. One is the cost. Second is geopolitical and economic risk. Third is infrastructure and logistics. Fourth is supplier reputation and financial health. Fifth, you can say infrastructure and connectivity. And sixth, you can say workforce. Ultimately, you choose the plus one strategy or plus one country that best suits you and your business needs. All right, the overall idea is clear to everyone. Quick thumbs up. Okay, I guess we are pretty much on track. No questions as such. Fine. We'll move to the sectors that may benefit or that has benefited from this Chinese plus one strategy. One of the beautiful sectors, and is actually the largest employer after agriculture in India, is the textile sector. It is labor intensive sector, as India's labor is comparatively cheap. Now, looking at the reports from the Confederation of Indian Industry and International Consulting Firm, which is AT Kearney, it was previously called AT Kearney, now it's Kearney. India's textile reports are predicted to increase by 80% to 65 billion by 2026. Quickly note this fact. As per Kearney, Kearney, the Indian textile exports is predicted to increase by 81% to $65 billion by 2026 from pre-COVID level of 36 billion in 2019. तो 2019 में 36 बिलियन था, 2026 में वो 65 billion होगा, which is almost a 81% increase. So whenever you're answering the question, hey, Ayush, can you tell me which are the sectors which may benefit according to you by this Chinese plus one strategy? So you will talk about, hey, textile sector is something which may benefit. Back it up with some numbers and figures. These are the figures that we're talking about. Someone has unmuted and trying to speak. Yes. Are you trying to speak anything? If not, please mute yourself.
So could you repeat the figures of the Courtney point that you just said?
So 2019 में Indian textile export was $36 billion. 2026 में projected है $65 billion, which is an increment of 81%. And this report has been provided by Kearney, Kearney. Kearney is a consulting firm which provides a lot of market research and reports. So this growth will be supported by the global China plus one sentiment. So we are all talking about China plus one sentiment in India. We are talking about made in India products, Atmanirbhar Bharat, banning Chinese applications, banning Chinese products. So all of these, localization sentiment is going around. So with this sentiment, the market will grow. This increase will probably result in around 10 million new jobs. Again, a figure that you should be noting. So due to India's more deep strategic bench compared to Vietnam or Bangladesh, is the sizable portion of the targeted growth. All right. So about 10 million new jobs could be created. The next sector is the metal sector. I don't know how many of you come from the metal sector, but very interesting concepts or very interesting understanding from the metal sector. It's Chinese geographical location is very conducive for metals, and they have a very good supply of different kind of metals. So India's natural resources are well positioned also to meet the demands of the domestic and global metal industries. With China's growing economy setting the stage for increased domestic steel demand, the world is looking to countries like India to fulfill its metal need. Even though China has a very good metal repository and metal ores, Indian market is also equally poised, not equally, but at least poised enough to meet some of the global demands. So India has initiated a production link incentive program for specialty steel sector. The quote for the word for the session is specialty steel sector, PLI for specialty steel sector. So this specialty steel sector PLI is estimated to attract more than 40,000 crores of investment in the next 5 years. And I think this has come in the last budget. So moreover, policy initiatives taken by China to withdraw export rebates and introduced export duties on processed steel products is also making India an even more attractive alternative for foreign businesses. Someone was talking about unified tax system and what are the different measures which has made Chinese companies not produce in that geography is the withdrawal of export rebates, introduction of export duties on different steel products. This is important, like this concept of the tax rebate was first implemented in the hot rolled coil, right? and therefore the demand in India is quite high. For instance, India has a competitive advantage in steel and aluminium on account of a adequate supply of raw materials and a growing market for finished goods. Hence, it can remain competitive globally on the backdrop of China reducing the production of these metals. And also due to ESG concerns, I hope you know what is ESG. Or due to ESG concerns, the capex in China for primary steel production or primary metal production is not in sync with the demand, leading to the higher prices. So सप्लाई कम हो जा रहा है, डिमांड ज्यादा हो जा रहा है, उसका मतलब ये कि लोग ज्यादा पैसा देने के लिए रेडी है, which means that the prices are getting higher for a particular raw material or for a particular mining or particular metal. And India is still having that cost advantage. Next is the pharmaceutical sector. India's pharmaceutical sector worth is 3.5 lakh crores. And it is ranked third globally in terms of volume production. So India's reputation as the world's pharmacy was highlighted when it supplied nearly 70% of WHO's vaccine needs in the financial year 21-22. We all know that. How many vaccines were given freely to different parts of the globe. And India even didn't patent the vaccine production, so that the science behind producing those vaccines could be easily available for other countries to emulate. And also, you know, India has exported a lot of vaccines. So the nation boasts the most FDA compliant pharmaceutical facilities outside US and offers at least 33% lower manufacturing cost. So the Indian pharmaceutical sector is anticipated to expand significantly, with a growth potential expected to reach somewhere to the tune of 10 lakh crore by 2030, which is making a very attractive sector for foreign investment. So इसमें FDI, FII आने लगेंगे. The next part is the specialty chemicals. The Indian specialty chemical sector looks at a period of fast-paced growth, driven by several market factors. India is emerging as a preferred manufacturing hub for specialty chemicals for domestic and export markets. Approximately 20% of the total chemical market in India, the specialty chemical sector is playing a pivotal role in driving the chemicals industry growth. So it is one of the growth drivers. So total chemical market in India ka 20% is specialty chemical sector. So if you come from chemical background or chemical engineering, please read up a little bit on the chemical sector. If you're not coming from this background, not required to go deeper into it, but just understand a very surface knowledge of how the chemical sector is working and what is the growth factors, what are the different PLI schemes in this sector, particularly in the Indian context. So the Indian chemical industry is a major player in the global market and is also ranking 6th in production and 14th in exports. Again, some figures, some numbers that you need to quote during your interview. So the sector provides essential building blocks and raw materials for many industries like agrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, textiles, paper, paint, and production of soaps as well. So it is valued at almost 20, rather I think not 20, but I think $220 billion, and is almost projected to grow by 19% in the next 5-year period starting from 2020 to 2025, and is expected to reach almost 300 billion. So from 220 billion, it is expected to reach 300 billion within just a span of 5 years. And the sector is also expected to hit $1 trillion market by financial year 2040. Again, some of the figures that you need to back up with your answers. Don't worry, I'll share the figures with you in the dashboard, in the portal, Prepzone portal. But as of now, just understand what I'm trying to talk about in the sector. So Indian specialty sector are at the lifetime high capex with healthy revenue, healthy earnings growth over the last 3-4 financial years. So they're benefiting from the strong demand from global clients as they're trying to look beyond China and increase their domestic consumption. Another sector which is pretty important to note is the ITES sector. India's IT sector is also one of the driving force for country's economic growth. And the nation has positioned itself as a center for outsourcing different services, different business process outsourcing, and is also home to numerous major players in the IT industry. Both homegrown companies also there, and also foreign companies are also investing heavily in Indian IT space. So not just the manufacturing side, but also the technology side is also gaining some valuable interest in India, because they have that cheap labor, comparatively cheap labor. They have the skill to provide the services in India. Right? From technology point of view, I'm sure everyone can quote the example of Apple, BMW, Hyundai. So try to quote these examples during your interview. Moving on to the challenges. Now, not everything is very good in India. We have to accept the fact. जितना भी India चिल्लाए हम लोग, we understand there are potential scope of improvement, and we also understand that we can do this. But for that, we need to identify what are the problems. It's important to note that while India offers significant advantages for companies considering China Plus One strategy, it also presents its own unique set of challenges. सबको पता है. What are those challenges? Infrastructure deficiencies. अभी ये अलग से किसी को बताना ही पड़ेगा. Right? While India is making efforts to improve its infrastructure, there is still a lot of deficiencies in transportation and logistics, in supplying of power. अभी बहुत जगह है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं पहुंचा है गांव-गांव में. And we are calling ourselves emerging market, emerging economies. Right? So what are the different challenges? Transportation challenges, logistics challenges. अगर manufacturing unit बनाना है India में, so your transportation should be top notch. The hours you take to transport from production house to the retailers go down, that has to be optimal. That has to be as per global standards. Second is the red tape, bureaucratic red tape. This point I don't want to touch at all. This is a regulatory environment. We all know what is the problem with our government. That is making definitely some progress, but we all know how the corruption is coming into it. Different permits, different under the table, bribery is going on. How many licenses you need to get in to start your business? There are different approvals, 10,000 of approvals you need to set up. You need to procure to set up your business and run the business. By the time the founder of the business dies, till the time he gets the approval. So there are different problems, right, which is causing to delay. Now this is where the ease of doing business kicks in. So you need to mention over here, what is the ease of doing business for India in a global context? What is the ease of business of different states in the country? जैसे महाराष्ट्र में कितना ease of doing business है, वेस्ट बंगाल में कितना है, तमिलनाडु में कितना है. So these are the data that you need to provide. Definitely, labor regulations. India has a very stringent labor laws that vary from state to state. We all know that in IT, the notice period is 90 days. Most of the firms. In US, it is 14 days. So, matlab, you need to give a notice period of just 14 days and you can leave the company then and there. But at the same time, or the other side of the coin is, the company can also give you 14 days notice and give you the pink slip. So which means that in India, if a company has to throw you out of the company, or maybe they want to lay off you, they need to give at least 3 months of notice or 3 months of retrenchment pay, which is not there in US. They will only give 14 days. 14 days, khatam, pink slip, and you're gone. So these are very stringent labor laws. And there are different, there are minimum income that needs to be provided. So different labor regulations are also there. The land acquisition, again important. Land acquisition comes under a lot of political pressures. One example I can definitely give is in West Bengal, Mamta Didi did not allow Tata to operate their plant or set up their plant in Singur. I think this is a very well-known topic. Everyone should be aware of this. So Singur में वो manufacturing plant बनाने ही नहीं दिया. Why? Due to bureaucratic pressures and political pressures. तब ममता दीदी को CPM को हटाना था and they had to create some ruckus sound of it, and they did this activity. which actually, what was the outcome of it? West Bengal ka loss, right? That shifted to a different state, and they benefited from the job market. They benefited from the GDP of the state or the place. They benefited in terms of industry putting in money into that state. So land acquisition is one of the problem. There are a lot of delays in acquiring lands. Inconsistent policy implementation. आज महाराष्ट्र में बीजेपी है, कल कोई दूसरा गठबंधन आ गया, and they are changing the plan. So inconsistent policy implementation, instability in government regulations, sudden changes in policies, sudden changes in regulations. This is causing one of the challenges or hurdles for companies, foreign companies, to operate in India. And finally, some talk about the taxation and custom duties, which is prevalent in India. GST is very complex. Imported raw materials में टैक्स लगा दिया, फिनिश गुड्स में एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हो तो उसमें टैक्स लगा दिया. तो कुछ ना कुछ टैक्सेशन पे भी एंड कस्टम ड्यूटीज में भी challenges आ रहे हैं, right? So these are the briefly some of the challenges that we are facing in Indian context when we are talking about the C+1 strategy. All right. So with this, we are ending the session. We are at 8:20 p.m. I have also left some of the references for you to go through at your own leisure. But mota, I want you to understand the concept, form some opinions about this China plus one strategy so that you can say something in the interview which is backed by some numbers and some figures. All right, with this, I end the session. I'll quickly stop the recording right now, and I'll take any questions in just a minute from now.
Sir, this will be uploaded, right?